Hey, what's going on, YouTube? We back again today. We're doing something a little different this time. I'm in the back room, a little bit of a back office area, tucked off. I wanted to talk to you guys and calm my area about something I was thinking about today, actually. Um, Kind of off the cuff topic. I haven't done too much research on it, but I want to talk about travel today. And today, as you can see, I'm not at home in the room, but I'm out a little bit for my light travel. But I want to talk about a form of travel. Um, Actually, when we leave the country, right, internationally, um, when we take bigger trips, much bigger than the one I'm taking today, um, I want to talk about that. And I want to talk about what it would be like. Let me just take those out for a minute. And I want to talk about what it would be like if international travel were free. I know, big concept, right? The idea that any form of travel would be free is probably a big concept. But it's not a new idea. It's not the craziest idea. At least I felt like it wasn't the craziest idea. Um, and I think we have a lot more crazy ideas going on in the world today than ever before. But I think what I'm saying has some value or some weight to it, right? Because there's the potential benefits of what it would be like to, and for our purposes, let's not count domestic travel, right? In my idea, I'm assuming that we are still paying, the for cars and local, you know, but like to step on a plane and go out of the country. What if that, you know, could be done freely? What if there were a free option, or what if altogether just the connections were free? So, give me a second here. I'll pull up discussion I was having. I already kind of mulled over these ideas. Had some notes on it too. Been digging into my notes lately. Um, so we were talking about the benefits, right, of it being free. The idea of international travel and what that could do, what the benefits would be for our money, as far as like not just saving, but expanding our opportunity, to be in a new place, for foreigners to expand their opportunity to be in a new place, you know, um, and the mutual benefits from one nation to another. Uh, Really, the benefits for all, the like unilateral benefits for the different nations that have plenty of people that want to see the world. I think about travel, and it kind of reminds me of the conversations people have about water and how important it is. And I think about how, the world today, we fight over things. And the countries, you know, they fight sometimes. Sometimes they don't. But the things that are most essential seem to almost always be shared. And people, they have a way to make sense of things. Nations, they have a way to make sense of things when it's necessary and when it's important. When people stand to benefit mutually, and there's no real reason um, to deny an access, or to fight and bump heads. You know, we usually just share. So I think about water, and I think about how we share the oceans, we share water. It rains through the clouds, and the earth's resources, they sometimes move around. The air, you know. But to stay focused on what I'm saying here, you know, because we stand to benefit all from having water, you know, we share it. We kind of have to. Um, and sure, it's possible that we could have conflict, we could raise conflict, and I'm sure we have. And there's history for that we could go into at a later uh, point or some other conversation. But what I'm saying is, for the reasons that I'm talking about now, we don't actually fight for the most part. We actually share for the most part. We actually all benefit for the most part and cooperate. So when we talk about international travel, of course everyone wants to do it. Some of us have, some of us are still, um, you know, determining what that destination is going to be, or maybe we're still finding our place, finding our destination that we want to go to. But just what if you could take that trip, you can go somewhere, and it were free, you know? And I mean, like longer trips, maybe a week or two or even longer. Um, I want to think about what it would look like for us to come to an ability to do that. Now, of course, it would cost money. Everything is going to cost. But the scheme or organization, the factors of organization for us to move money and ourselves and our perception around to make sense of this is also kind of a challenge, but it's also interesting because it will require us to make such deep changes. The way we see money and the way we see travel, you know, we don't think, for whatever reason, that traveling is like a right. You know, we see ourselves as having a right to land, or having a right to speak, or having a right to do, these different things that we do in society. And I agree with those. I think the ability to travel, to go somewhere, to see something different, I don't think that should be limited by your money, how much money you have, per se. You know, I think if a person wanted to, go to a country, the resources exist in the world for that person. There are enough planes, there's enough fuel. The question of money and the question of a person acquiring their ticket, I feel like is really such a small factor, and it's such a small issue. Now, we know, of course, everyone, all, the time traveling, that's a lot of resources, that's a lot of money, um, and that's a lot to think about. But I'll say that international travel, it's not all of travel, but what if there were a way? You know, what if there were a way? Because you've got money, right? The opportunities, or money opportunities, the opportunities that come from new money. Um, but we've got the culture itself, right? Our culture, other cultures. Um, it's a little weird online how we can pick up a phone and call someone or video someone, see someone, um, hear them, and everything. But we can't actually, few of us in a society can actually afford to just get up and go to a country. But if I utilize my phone, I can create content or have communications with, you know, just about any country. But to actually go there, the actual physical access to these locations, it just feels so difficult, you know. Sometimes just getting out of the house, you know, and traveling locally has its own challenge. But the thing about it is when you're going somewhere close, you don't have to think about the resource of money usually. Sometimes you do, but that makes, you know, much less barriers to an entry. That makes for a lot less headaches and a lot less roadblocks when you can, you know, leave your house and go somewhere that's a car ride, a train ride away, somewhere you can walk to. Um, Sometimes people don't appreciate this, but I think when we can take economics out of it or make the economic implication small, you know, I know I'm saying free travel, um, but even if the economic implication and cost were low, this kind of achieves what I'm saying. You know, I'm technically talking about free, but really what I'm talking about is access. And I think to some places, there's, you know, there's greater access than other, there are greater forms of access to certain destinations and locations than others, right? Um, and I think that's because of the prices, right? That's because of, you know, things that indirectly affect price, like your timing, you know, when you decide to actually confirm, you know, and make your purchase versus just looking it up and maybe deciding um, that you're not 100% decided. You know, that right there can change your price and it can change your access, you know, in this world of money. So, you know, I know countries have programs where we subsidize and we make special allocations. Sometimes we have budgets and, you know, many different styles of approach to accomplish this sort of thing, um, to provide access, I mean, for people. I think in this kind of discussion, you know, one of the biggest points that people would have against it is that, again, the costs and the how. I think, you know, we could all appreciate why we would want to have this as a thing. Um, and even people who are outside of the area, those that wanted to come into America, they would have their reason that they would love it, you know. Um, they would have their reason to want access to this land to see, live and be a part of, you know, really, I say the world, but what we have going on here and then some. I have really been thinking about the idea of, you know, being a global citizen and just kind of like being a citizen of the planet, you know. It's not a time right now, it's not really about unity in these times right now. In these times right now, it's much more about conflict and war. And I think really that's a distraction, you know, the um, the idea that people are not really together when we actually are, and we actually have always been, you know. Last time I checked, this is the only planet that I've been on, you know, and at least for this time, and you know, in these spaces. And I think we're a lot closer and connected than we are anything else, you know. Another example I could bring up is space travel, you know. Those guys out there, I feel like they share a similar sentiment. And it's similar to the thing I was saying about water. You know, we share space. You know, space itself, like we share space. We share the universe. We share the planet. We share the sky. We share water, and you know, there's room for these ideas about what we like in America, the competition. Uh, there's room for the gladiators. There's room for the presentation, the spectacle of, you know, what we like. But to say that we're not playing in the same space, that we're not here, you know, and maybe a hodgepodge container, whatever, you know, we decide it is, we are in that, in that together. So if we're in it together, why not take advantage, right? Um, Society itself, the structures, the housing, the technology, the way business is working, and our money to exchange with each other, even if we don't like each other. You may not know the people behind a business, but you know what it does for you. You know what the product and the value brings, and so you buy it. To take money out of it, you know, if we take money out of it, when we think about, you know, going to the park, um, you don't pay for that with money, but your access, you know, society pays for that. The water, you don't pay for it. I mean, you pay for it um, in certain ways, you know, when you're consuming it. Uh, but let's say you rent an apartment or space and you have water that you use for your bodily purposes, and the water flows out of your sink. You know, there are things that kind of like come as a part of access. Technically, we pay for everything, but to take currency out of it, to take money out of it, I think provides an access, and we know that. But our perception, what we believe is important, what we would like to do most frequently, you know, everybody, you know, needs certain things, and those things we do most frequently. Sometimes we can't charge what we, you know, sometimes we can't charge at all, or sometimes we shouldn't, you know. Money can be very tricky, but I think the idea of having access to whichever destinations we could, or as many as possible, for seeing other cultures, for being a connected global citizen, I think the if we were to bring money back into it, for argument's sake, the cultural and economic benefits, I think, would outweigh the costs. in a long run, you know. I I think that people would really disagree with this a lot, you know. And of course you have others that would agree, but I think people would really come down hard on this because, you know, right now we're not in a time where people feel they are in a unifying spirit. People feel at odds with each other. And so deep down inside there are a lot of reasons to um, want to get the best deal, right? We don't really want to exchange with one another as much as we want the best deal out of every situation. We don't really see ourselves as a community where we want what's best for someone else yet. Rather, we would like what's best, you know, for ourselves individually because, you know, the notion that the world is in turmoil or that there's heightened danger, there's heightened danger that we perceive. Um, and you know there are real things going on, but the mindset that we have in our home, I mean, in our country, in America, you know, it's definitely not leaning towards the future of people just recognizing that we're all here on this space or in this space, and we always have been, as far as, you know, we can probably look back realistically. We've been on this planet for a long time. And throughout everything we've done in history, all the wars and all the good things as well, like technology, our practices, our growth, all the communications and language, and just our spiritual height, having our needs met and not worrying about survival. You know, we stood the most to benefit from our activities and supporting each other, you know, as human beings. We've stood the least to benefit from pulling each other, you know, and like down toward negative spaces and fighting. I feel like it's done the least for us. And the thing is, sometimes we fight with money. Sometimes we use money, or we set rules, you know, on the stage so that there's less access. We set rules on the stage so that there's less money to go around. And I think we miss out for it. We really miss out for not having diversity in some of these circles, some of the places in the world where diversity could stand to actually bring so much creativity, design, purpose, you know. I think international travel, if people could do it, if there were a way to make it, you know, free or really low cost, that would be something. Imagine being able to go to Dubai, take a flight. These places, I know. Um, and you know, this conversation I'm definitely going to have to break into multiple parts and bring some research in. But I wanted to talk about the idea. I wanted to talk about how it felt to me and maybe how it would make you feel, yourself thinking about it, and maybe just get that stream of consciousness going with more than just myself. You know, I think we're in a time right now of reconstruction. We're reconstructing ourselves and the groups that are. Um, they're also reconstructing. Society is, restructuring. And, there are a lot of ideas about what people think is the best. But I know that with all these ideas, we've got to entertain some different things. We've got to at least think about something different, because we're getting hit with, something new every day. There's some newness every day. And if we're looking to the bright side of that, well, I've got some ideas, and you've got some ideas. So we can add to this whole mix up and change as things get reconstructed or reconstructed. We can add our requests and add our energy to that process, rather than just watch the process happen, watch things go by. We can create a connection, a whole field of connection, by seeing ourselves, visualizing ourselves and what we would be doing, how the world should look. Funny enough, just from a little bit of search I did, there seems to be, like an existing model for this sort of free travel thing, you know. And just another quick side idea. Again, I'm going to have to come back on this, but imagine how much people could spend on their trips when they arrive. They could, once they arrive at a destination, how a country, how an economy could receive the money that will go to a really expensive flight or really expensive form of travel, whatever it is, for the international goer. And maybe, there's a form of paid and unpaid in this model, but maybe there's an option or few options for the free, the whole freemium thing. And then, it could make more sense there, because we know if there's only one option, it's not gonna probably be viable. But maybe it will. We have that sometimes, right? The one free option, and either everyone jumps on it or no one jumps on it. you know. So that's definitely a thing. But yeah. I had something else here. The idea of like security and infrastructure, which kind of we're touching on that, or about to touch upon that, because would it be a flight, or would it be travel by like a boat? Would it include train? Maybe, possibly, yeah, maybe all three. But I was visualizing like, those getting on a flight, those getting on a plane, and making a quick, or the quickest form of transport. But it's just an idea that I came across in my mind. So yeah, why not expand it to other modes of transport? Because what I'm really saying is, it's about the people. and what we would do, what we would receive, all the stuff we would buy if we could, or the investments we could make, just having that free cash to actually think about, and just how a country would receive us, how we would receive them, you know, when they wouldn't have to worry about that part, you know, the the international travel fee, you know, and again, maybe there's an option for it, and maybe there isn't an option for it. Maybe they'll pay a small amount. Maybe we'll pay a small amount and be able to go internationally, which, I'm sure people are doing now. I'm sure that there's a way to, pay the least, pay less. But the idea that the society we are living in, the same way it provides water, where you can walk into a place and you can turn the sink on, and use water, even at a restaurant. And you wouldn't be charged, the society provides that. What if we could provide travel, and how it would change us? How it would change the idea of borders, the idea of a person, and the idea of being a citizen. Yeah, let me know what you think about this idea. You know, if you agree with it and you think, you know, why isn't it? Why isn't it free? Because maybe it's an idea that has some, valid value, something that could be tried. Maybe it's an idea that would just go bust, you know, and some reasons for it. But on my notes here, I saw, there's something called the EU Shenzhen area that has an existing model. Got to be honest, I've got to do some research on that and see, more about what that is and how that could work for us. There's also a note I have about like visa-free area, which is even more radical. Visa-free area. Probably we'll have to talk about infrastructure and security again, but still, in these times where things are being redone, reconstructed, rerouted, you know, um, maybe time to put some ideas into review. uh, and so this is the idea that I'm reviewing today. Um, Indoors again, you know. Next time I probably be presenting to you guys on my feet. You know, I like this. It's a little bit more energy. But yeah, that's pretty much where I think I'd like to leave it. Have more ideas on this that probably let me go more in depth, like my examples and what I said. A little bit about I guess a model they have in Europe. They're always trying new things out there. I feel like when it comes to societal ideas and benefits. So I think next time we're going to continue our conversations on another topic, but I'll definitely be back on this topic once again. All right, YouTube. It was good talking to you guys. Peace.